Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone to tvosj.org, the voice of San Joaquin, right here off the Miracle Mile in Stockton, California. Hey, this is show number 2 for Sims. I want you to say it. I don't want to be the one to say it, but hey, congratulations. You did great on the first one, and I know you're going to do great from here on. So, this is it. This is
Thank
your
you.
show. Take it away, my friend.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. As you know, Simmons is a new thing that I'm giving a shot at. It's not like the first time I've been involved in radio because I have. I used to have my own show up in the Washington area when I worked at KWFU, and then when I worked for station AMEL Channel 2 in Spokane, they also had a radio side, and I used to work around that too. That's the same thing that I'm doing now, so that's why I'm pretty comfortable with doing what I'm doing. With that said, one of the topics that we're going to start off with today is the Kobe Bryant Memorial. It's a very difficult thing for me to discuss because it's hard when you lose legends. And, Kobe is the kind of person that creates, or there's never a ambivalent reaction to anything about Kobe Bryant. You either loved him or you hated him. You loved him because of the fact that he was one of the most unstoppable offensive NBA players ever. He was bold, had an attitude that, he was always going to be the best player on the floor. And he took over games, literally. I'll give you an example. I remember when the Lakers were playing the Kings in a playoff game. And about midway or late in the third quarter, Shaquille O'Neal picked up his fourth or fifth personal foul. I can't remember which. And the series was a battle. And Kobe just took over in the late third period in the fourth while Shaq sat there and watched from the bench. And it was weird to watch because everybody in the building knew who was going to get the ball and what he was going to do with it, but nobody could do anything about it. Because this guy, as far as, I have some pretty deep basketball roots and experience, and I can tell you, of all the players I've ever seen, this was the one guy who could make what I call tough shot, difficult shot. The kind of shots that, I don't even know how you practice them. Because you have to practice them with somebody in your face or running under you or touching you or grabbing. This guy made shots. And he made very tough shots. And he made tough shots look easy. And he took them in situations that meant the game, and he would make it. He was a finisher. If there was a situation where his team was in trouble, they called on him and they would give him the ball and get out of the way. And, it's not an easy thing. It's tough to, be that guy to, that your team is going to count on, that you're going to need. When you need a basket, where do you go? Well, he's the one saying, not only should I have the ball, you should give me the ball. And I want it, give it to me. I'll take it, and I'll make it. And guys, there's lots of guys who talk like that. And a few times, and they deliver every now and again, but most of the time, Kobe Bryant delivered. And so because of that, fans, due to his, I'll just use the word, he was arrogant. He believed in his abilities to the highest level. And he had no fears. And what was funny was when his career first started and he was in the playoffs, the Lakers ended up getting swept in a series by Utah. And he took the shot that would have tied the game, the shot an air ball. And, everyone's laughing, saying, ha, 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 Lakers got this 17-year-old kid, and, they drafted him first, and now look what happens. Well, an interesting story to that. When that game ended, and Kobe put his head down, Shaquille O'Neal walked over to him, grabbed him by the shoulders, looked him in the eyes, and said, look, man, That was once. Remember this feeling of us losing this series and getting swept. Never forget this. And these people that are laughing at you right now, remember all of this. Because there's going to be a time when you're going to get your man back. And when you do, you can sit there and look at them and laugh at them. Now, like I say, that sounds pretty vindictive, but as an athlete, that's kind of like the way you got to be. Because fans are cruel. Fans can be the kind of people that expect a lot out of you, and when you don't perform, they call you up. Oh, it happens. But this guy had no problem taking that, putting all that on his back and, letting it ride on him like a pony. He didn't care. And, for that reason, he elicited strong responses of hate or strong responses of love. But I think the particularly tragic part about this situation and this incident was the fact that he lost his daughter too. And I think, and this is, like I said, this is just a personal opinion of mine, but I honestly believe that had that girl survived, that she would have been a major boom for college, for women's basketball, and the WNBA. She would have been huge for that. And why I say that is because as a dad, okay, as a father who has a son and who played, my son played basketball, of course, and of course we played at St. Mary's High School. As a father, seeing him play in my uniform, and what was funny was I wore number 32, and at St. Mary's he wore number 23, which, that's on him. I didn't tell him to do that. But anyway, as a father, you kind of expect your son to follow in your footsteps. It wasn't something I wanted, but it just kind of happened that way. Because, he's all my friends would see him and say, hey, man, your dad, man, I remember your dad did this, your dad did that. And this was like when he was playing YMCA ball. And then when he went to high school, of course, those things got even worse. But as a dad, the best thing that you can see is to see your son out there doing his thing and stepping into that void that you left when since you don't play anymore. What was unusual about Kobe and Gianna's relationship, Kobe didn't have any boys. All girls. 4 girls. Gianna embraced Kobe's persona. And when I say persona, his persona was the Black Mamba. Now, he saw himself in that caricature because a Black Mamba is silent, it's deadly, it's unrelenting, and it has no fear. If you watch a nature documentary, you'll see a Black Mamba, an elephant can be walking toward it, it'll stop, turn around, and stand up and rear back to an elephant, which we all know weighs about, 10, 15, 20 tons. And here's this snake that might weigh about 20, 30 pounds, but it has the most lethal venom of any snake on the planet. And it knows how lethal it is. So it sees any animal, a rhino, an elephant, it looks at it like, so, you want some? Come on. Well, let's get it on. That was that Mamba mentality. His daughter was developing that. And it would have been really interesting to see her in high school and her in college and her playing possibly at WNBA level with that mindset, with that persona. Because a lot of times when I listen to men, I'm a WNBA fan. I actually watch it. I like it. Because when my daughters were coming up and they wanted to play, I embraced that league because I wanted them to be able to have the same kind of heroes and that kind of thing as my son did when he watched the NBA or college ball. So I embraced it. And I think that she would have gotten a lot of other fathers when they saw her mentality. And a lot of other fathers would have been telling their daughters, hey, you know what? You can be like her. And she developed Kobe's person. She was Kobe's, like, ruse. And she followed in his footsteps. There was a day, and I heard a story the other day during his memorial, and they were talking about her, her daughter playing. And she was playing in an AAU game, and she was going to the basket. She ran into a girl, knocked her down, made the shot, and she yelled out, "and one," and walked to the foul line. Women's college basketball's biggest star right now is a girl named Sabrina Ionescu. And she plays in Oregon, and she's from the Bay Area. And just the other night, in fact, on the day of the memorial, she's the only player in history to have 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, and 1,000 assists. And when she was talking about Kobe and her relationship with Kobe, she mentioned this incident that Kobe had brought up to her. And Kobe looked Sabrina in the eye and said, "Gee, I wonder where she learned that from." And they both laughed, because that was Kobe's persona. And that's what this little girl was embracing. So it would have been interesting to see, had she been able to play high school and college and even maybe professional, to see that attitude going to other levels at the higher levels of women's sports. And had she been successful in those endeavors, I can tell you right now that she would have been a marketing dream for Nike or any other thing, because she was a sweet-looking young kid, and she loved the game of basketball. She played hard, which was just like her dad, which in a way shouldn't be surprising, but yet still, everyone has these preconceived notions about what they think girls are going to play like or what girls should be like, which I know is sexist, but that's what men do. Because we're not necessarily the brightest people on the planet anyway, and we make a lot of assumptions about how we think women should be. Well, the truth is, women just are. And so it was wonderful in this case that she embraced her father's, athletic persona. And I would have liked to have seen where it could have gone, because I think it would have done a lot of good things for women's sports in particular. But, tragically, it didn't turn out that way. And so in the memorial and in the service, of course you had every major name you could think of that was there. From Shaq to Michael Jordan to, Sabrina Ionescu, and I can go on. But what was kind of off-putting was the fact that they didn't have much to say or show very often or even interview Kobe's mom and dad and his two sisters. They never actually talked to those people. And so what I've noticed a lot on social media, and even in the media itself, general media, is that that started to become an issue. People started asking questions. Why is that? Well, to just put it simple and plain, Kobe's mom and Kobe's wife, when Kobe first met her and when he became engaged to her, she wasn't on board with that. Because how they met was at a video rap shoot, and we won't even go into why Kobe was doing a rap video, but he did one, and she was in it. She was one of the dancers in it, and they started talking on set, and they start dating, and next thing you know, they're engaged. And Kobe's mom, being a mom, was, naturally caught off guard, a little, suspicious, wondering about the girl's motives, because she hadn't really met her. Now, that's probably not fair, but it happened. And what maybe would have liked to or hoped to have seen would have been her, would have been his mom after a while, seeing what kind of mom the girl is, and seeing the kind of relationship that they have, and maybe lighten up a little bit. And then try to develop some sort of rapport, communication, for the sake of the kids and the sake of the fact that Kobe is her son. But that hasn't materialized. It didn't at the time, and it definitely hasn't now. And the fact that, they did a memorial for this man, and all of these other people were involved in this, except his parents and his sister, that kind of smacked of something that didn't strike right with me. Because, I recognize while, families go through strains, they go through all kinds of stuff, that was just harsh. Because you have to think about those people at a time like this as well. And they just kind of got pushed off to the side. And for the most part, I haven't heard any complaints from any of them about it, but they can't be happy about it. And so my heart goes out to them because, I know I try not to say I know how somebody feels, because you can't say that really, because nobody really knows how they feel. But it just seems to me like they would feel like they've been left out or pushed to the side. And so, in all of this, I think that's one of the biggest, one of the bigger tragic parts of this. But at the same time, if they weren't, comfortable with it or had issues with her, maybe now this is the time all that can get fixed up. Because everyone's personal feelings and emotions should be kicked to the curb for a minute, while they embrace this situation. So, with that said, like I said, I enjoyed the opportunity to see everyone show, their respects, to, in my opinion, one of the greatest players of all time. But like I said, there's still unopened and unanswered questions in terms of how people are going, how all this went down. And I recently even just read that his wife wants to sue the helicopter firm. But we'll leave that one for another discussion. But for the most part, like I said, I hope that they can get all those things ironed out, because, family squabbles I know happen, but sometimes you just got to rise above them. And so I hope they get that worked out. Now, my next topic, I'm going to talk about the high school sports, high school basketball. We have a lot of positives to discuss about that today, because we're in the playoff stage. We're past the regular season, and we're now knee-deep in the playoff. So what I'm happy about is I'm seeing a lot of progress. I'm seeing a lot of local teams getting the opportunity, that have gone far in the playoff. And I think that's a great thing, because, for a while there, I was kind of concerned about the level of basketball talent and teams in our area. But after taking a closer look, we're doing okay. For example, on the girls' side, St. Mary's will be playing Oak Ridge in the D1 final. Now, of course, everyone's going to say, well, it's St. Mary's. It's the St. Mary's girls. They always win. They're always very good. Well, that's true. But last year was a down season for them. And let me put that in perspective. Down for them means they didn't win 29 games and go to the state finals. So, from that perspective, it was a down year. But this year's team has seemed to have bounced back from all that. And they're young, and they've still got a ways to go as far as reaching their potential. But they're in the section final, and here's a wonderful little statistic that you might want to carry home with you. If they win the section championship, I think they play Friday, or either tomorrow or Friday. If they win the section championship, this will be the 13th straight time. But let me say that one more time to make sure you heard me right. If they win the section championship, this will be the 13th straight time that they've won the section championship, which is insane. But that's the type of success they've had as a program. They've won a couple of national championships. They've won 8 state championships. I think coming into this season, they've won 15 championships as far as second championships. They won 15. And I think they've won something ridiculous like 20 or 25 championships. And that, in my opinion, probably makes them in that program the most successful program in the history of Cal. Some people may disagree with me, but I would really like to have somebody show me anyone that has a better record than that. And by the way, that includes the boys. Because they've been the most successful program I've ever seen. And hopefully, once we get this thing rolling, I'd like to get Tom Gonzalez to appear on this program and talk to him and ask him some questions and let him, let him blow off some steam and talk about a few things about the program. Because, like I say, I have great respect for what's been accomplished there. Because they've been excellent. And so they're going to play Oak Ridge in the final. Also, from the TCAL, Lincoln got into the finals. They lost in their second game, I believe. But Lincoln got in. And then you have Argonaut, which is in the Motherlode League up in the hills, and they're in the D4 finals. And then you have the Edison girls, who made it to the second round of the finals, and they played St. Mary's, and ended up getting beat. And you had the East Union girls, who were 22-5, who won the VOL that went to the playoffs. And then you had Kimball, who was 23-7, and they also went to the playoffs, but they got put out. And then in the D3 final, you have Merced High School. So when you start talking about the lower part of the section, which the 209, the Sac Joaquin section stretches all the way from the 916, which is Sacramento, all the way to Merced. We get underrepresented at times because of the fact that we're the country folk from the southern 209, we're the Ag Belt area. So sometimes we get overlooked, and that's why I'm always happy when our local teams or 209 or the southern section teams go beat the crap out of Sacramento teams. That does my heart good. And also, I want to make sure I don't forget about these guys. The Ripon Christian girls in Ripon, California, are playing in the D6 girls finals, which is impressive. They had kind of a weird year in the fact that they lost like 10 games. They ended up 15 or 16-10. But they were good enough to get to their division finals, which tells me that was one of those teams that maybe didn't start out so well. But over the course of the season, they figured things out. They understood their system. They believed in themselves. Now they're in the final. So a lot of exciting stuff. And by the way, all that's going to end up being at the Golden One Arena in Sacramento. I believe that's tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday, I believe. There's going to be games. There'll be games in different divisions. You can check the CIF section website for dates, for times and dates. And if you get a chance, you should go check it out because, it's good stuff. It's good to support your own schools. And even it's just good to just watch quality high school basketball. Now, we're going to get to the boys. The boys have been a really interesting situation because you've got a lot of good teams in this area that are playing in finals. the Ripon Christian boys are playing the Stockton Christian boys in the D6 final up in Sacramento at the Golden One Arena. So that's two teams from the southern section that will be playing for each other for a title. You'll have Sonora that's in the D4 final. And in my opinion, Sonora is one of the best teams in this area, period, whether it's no matter what division. And I say that because they have a young man playing for them that's going to end up being a college basketball player. And I think he may end up being a Division I player. And when I say Division I mean a Power 5 conference school or a school that gives out Division I scholarships. Because this guy can score it, like really score it. Averages somewhere in the neighborhood of 23, 24 points a game. He had a 40-plus point game toward the end of the regular season. And his name is Austin Patterson, who's a guard. And there's coaches that are finding, college coaches, because trust me, if you're a good player, they're going to find you. Well, they're finding him. And they're going up in the hills taking a look at this guy because he can play. And he's led, I believe he's a junior, so he's got another year. And he's led Sonora to the D4 finals with a 27-3 record. This guy's no joke. And it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. The thing about the playoffs for boys and the girls is that once you win after the second round, you get to the semifinal, then you become eligible to play in the NorCals. So the NorCals means you get an opportunity to play to be the champion of Northern California, which would mean going to the state tournament. So at this stage, if you won a section, you're about 2 or 3 games away from going to the state finals. And we got a few teams that, have a legitimate shot, and I think Sonora is one of them. The other one, in the D5 final this year, is going to be Brookside Christian, who is 22-8. And they got a kid on their team that's also a very good player who I think is going to end up being a Division I player, named Geronimo De La Rosa. And he's an interesting case because he's a transfer from outside this country. And he came to school over here in Stockton to play at Brookside Christian after basically looking on the internet for some places to transfer to from his country to come to high school to play out here. And if you ever get the opportunity to, you should read up on his story. Because it's very impressive. Because this is a kid that basically, and especially in the times now when we have issues with immigration, he's an example of why, immigration to this country is something people do because they want a better life. And he did that, and it's worked out for him. And from what I've met, from what I've heard from others, he's a good kid, studious, very intelligent, and he can go. This kid can play. And so they're in the Division 5 finals, and I hope and I wish them well because, like I said, number one, they're local, but number two, that kid's story is really a great story, and I would like to see him lead them to a successful finish. And then you have Central Catholic, which is out of Modesto. They're 24-7, and they're in the Division III finals. And the reason why these guys are interesting to me is because they beat a team that I thought this year was going to be doing what they're doing. Western Ranch was a very good basketball team. They got 2 legitimate Division I basketball players and a third that could be. And while they don't have a lot of size, these guys can go. I mean, they're great athletes, and they know how to play, and they play well together. And so before the season started, I was kind of picking those guys to go to the finals. And early in the season, they had their issues. They scheduled they had a very tough schedule, extremely tough schedule. And so, they lost a few games, and, maybe a couple of them they shouldn't have, or they lost close to some very good basketball teams. And so, but I'm thinking, okay, during the regular season, they're probably going to run right through the VOL. Well, no. Central Catholic made the decision that wasn't going to happen. And so Central Catholic beat them twice. And the first time they beat them, Central Catholic kind of controlled the game, and, pretty much from start to finish. The second time they played them, they ended up beating them at the buzzer with a 3-point shot from half court by a guard from Central Catholic by the name of Magana. And this kid, about 5'10", 5'11", this point guard, this guy he can play. And I saw him in the section playoffs last year when it was at UOP when I saw the section final. And that kid was impressive. And he's led that team this year, and they're in the finals, and they're going to be in Arco. I don't know why I keep doing that. They're at the Golden One Center this week also. And then, of course, so I'll just get all this out of the way. My alma mater, St. Mary's High School. They are in the D2 final. And they finished with a 23-8 record. So we haven't finished yet. They still have one more. And they beat Jesuit last night to get to the final. And Jesuit was the number 1 seed. And so St. Mary's will grant for an opportunity to win the section championship. And Grant's a pretty good ball club from what I hear from my friend Joe Davidson up from Sacramento Bee. And that should be a very interesting contest. But for St. Mary's, it's like it's a weird dichotomy as far as how they got here, because they play in the T-Cal. Pardon me. And in the T-Cal, they play against. They play in a league that basically is a bunch of D1 teams, with the exception of Modesto Christian, which is, in terms of enrollment, a smaller school. But most of the time, St. Mary's plays against schools that have a higher enrollment. But due to, most of the time they're having very good basketball teams, they play at, they play in that league and compete. And then they end up playing a division lower during the playoffs because that's what their enrollment fit. And this year, they finished third. And as somebody who, of course, is an alum, that normally doesn't happen where they finish third in league. But when you look at the teams that they finished behind, that sets them up prepared to be a very difficult Division II foe, because they lost to Lincoln once, and they lost to Modesto Christian twice. And Modesto Christian took first in the league, and Lincoln took second. So the weird part about all that is that while they lost to those bigger schools, they're getting the opportunity to play schools that fit their enrollment level, and now they're in the final. And they get the opportunity to win one of those blue banners, of which they have many. And trust me, I know about that, because 2 of them I had something to do with. But that's another story. So at any rate, they're going to be at the Golden One playing Grant in the final, and that ought to be interesting. Modesto Christian, who's also in that league, will be playing in the NorCals because they got to the semifinal. And again, like I said, if you get to the semifinal of your section playoff bracket, that makes you eligible to play in the Northern California, in the NorCals. And that gives you an opportunity, even if you lose a game, to not be completely out of the tournament. You got to lose 2 of them to be out you have to lose another game to get put out of the NorCal playoffs, which I think is a fair rule, because it gives teams, if you won your first 2 games and you lost to one of the teams in the semifinal, obviously you got there, so you're all pretty much even, and you might have had an off night and lost that game, and you'll get the opportunity now if you just had an off night to keep playing. And, if you can get the shit corrected, who knows what happens. And when I was playing semi-pro ball, I was in a couple situations where we were in double elimination tournaments, and we lost the first game and won the next 5 and ended up being champion. And it was, it was surreal because we ended up playing more games than anybody because that's what we had to do to win it, and we did it. We just had, I don't know what happened in the first game, but we were horrible, and we got beat, and then we won every game after that, including the team that beat us in the final. So it was weird, but that's why I like double elimination tournaments in the high school level, because if somebody has an off night, it's not the end of the world. If you got to the semifinal and lose for whatever reason, you still got a shot. It's a tougher road because you're going to get a low seed and you're probably going to play on the road, but hey, as long as you're still in, you got a chance. And that's what I like about that. So if you get an opportunity to either watch or hear or read about our local high school kids, they're going to be at the Golden One. And they're looking pretty good. This should be a very interesting playoff. You should get the opportunity to go take a look at them and see what's going on. Because I tell you, high school basketball is fucked up. And I've always enjoyed it, and I'll always enjoy it. Because there's nothing better than seeing kids yelling at women in the air shells behind them, but that's another story. So that way, I'm going to go into something that I do as a person that helps encompass what I'm doing here on the show. One of the things that I'm involved in is I'm the founder of ASD Sports Media. And what that is it's an opportunity for me to write sports stories and sports journalism, live video of games, that kind of thing, that I've done pretty much all of my life. But it gives me the opportunity to sort of be an independent journalist. And I'm proud of it in the fact that, it was my creation. Myself and my best friend Jim Rosa, may he rest in peace. We decided to get together and do some things to help promote high school athletics here in town. I don't have to tell anybody who lives in this town that Stockton has its issues. But the one thing that Stockton has always been good at is we create athletes. And I mean by the boatload. I mean, literally some of the best, greatest athletes that have played sports anywhere in the country, any sport, have come from Stockton. And when I speak of people like Webster Slaughter, played for the Cleveland Browns, Franklin, somewhere in the background, Betty smiling, because she definitely knows who that is. Al Gross, who also went to Franklin High School, is a real personal friend of mine. Me and him been friends since we were little kids. Played in the NFL for the Cleveland Browns. And then Addison High School had Derek Kennard, Super Bowl champion. It's the Dallas Cowboys in center for him. My homeboy, Boss Harlem. 6'3", 300-pound front terror. All built, wrapped up in one package. One of the toughest, baddest dudes you ever want to meet in your life. Great guy, though. And he won a Super Bowl for the Dallas Cowboys. He went to Addison. And when you say Addison or you say local high school football success, you have to talk about Edison's incredible history. Edison has had 17 high school graduates from Edison High School play in the NFL. Wow. That's more than De La Salle, for those of you out there that don't know anything about how to put that into comparison. De La Salle, as a high school at one time, won 154 straight high school football games, and they won state like 5, 6, 7 times in a row. Just an incredibly successful program. They've only had 14 guys turn pro out of their school. Edison has had 17. Guys like Jaden Hill, guys like Prentice McCray, Fred Herring, John Nesby, Lavelle Hawkins. And that's just, from recently. And, you got guys even now locally that didn't play at Edison, that are playing in the NFL right now. Because Brandon Cooks, who played the Super Bowl last year, plays for the Rams, as well as Lincoln High School's running back Davis. And then another Edison kid named Trey Johnson plays for the New York Jets. It's crazy. It's crazy how much talent this area produces. And it's hard to put into context, because if you start bringing in all the schools in the 209 area, you have guys that played pro from Tracy, from Lincoln, from St. Mary, to Lodi, to Atwater, to Merced. It's nuts. And, when people think of this area, they think of it as, an agrarian area, one that struggles. You have either the country, places like Linden, or you got the city, which is in Stockton, and of course everyone thinks Stockton is like the most dangerous place on the planet, which, it has its moments, but I've been to a few places where it ain't no worse than any place else, in my opinion. But I love this town. And as a high school kid coming up, I had the opportunity to, end up having some success. Myself, my brother, and my sister. And my brother and sister went to Edison, and I went to St. Mary's. And of course, people would say, "How did that happen?" Well, I don't want. We'll get to that another day. But at the same time, the atmosphere around this area, in terms of producing athletes and that kind of thing, was just charged. And high school sports meant everything. On any given weekend, depending on who was playing, you have a sellout. Like, I remember my brother's senior year, they were playing Stag at Edison. And basically, if you didn't show up during the JV game, good luck getting a seat. They might be standing, or they might not let you in. And that was that's how serious it was around here. And a lot of those guys that played in that game ended up going to play at major colleges, and some of them even went to the NFL. Because that's what we do in this town. We have a lot of great athletes. And that's why supporting the kids that do stuff now, because back in the day, when the Stockton Record was a little bit more locally centered, that was the thing, was that they had the athlete of the week. They interviewed some guy who you scored 30 points, that was a good chance you were going to feature on. And why that means something to me is because I know that if a kid is focusing on success, he's not focusing on failure. So you give him a reason to succeed. Give him a want to. And, everybody has an ego. And so if you're striving to get an article about you in the newspaper, that means you're doing something positive. And I think what happens here in this town is we get stuck in the negative. And I think that we haven't had enough local journalism support of our kids in this area. So I decided, myself and my friend Jim, we just decided we were going to get together and start doing positive things for the kids in the area. Making sure that their names got mentioned. Making sure that their teams got mentioned. Making sure that, coaches that were doing a good job got mentioned. And schools that were doing well got mentioned. And then, we were just doing it initially just for fun. And then all of a sudden it started turning into people started supporting what we were doing. And everywhere we went, people would say, ASD Sports, yeah. Sure, you guys, man, we'd love to have you here. Please come and cover one of our games and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay. Maybe this could be a little more than that. And so we have social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if you want to learn other intricate things about the area, that would be a good source for that. Also, on an individual basis, this month I do a series every year on Black history, Black athletes in Black history. And I've done one. I do one every day, and I've covered, pardon me, pretty much every sport. And for example, today, one of the people I covered was a guy that most people have never even heard of. Now, what's interesting is, just a year ago, he was in a commercial, a beer commercial. And that commercial basically discussed the fact that he was the first world champion Black cyclist. Yes, a bicycle. 50 years before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier in baseball. This guy had set a bunch of records in cycling. And for the most part, cycling at that time, they considered that person to be the best athlete in the world. And so this gentleman was named Major Taylor. And I wrote an article about him today. And his name was Marshall Walter Major Taylor. He ended up becoming a professional cyclist. Which, I'm not sure what that means. I'm guessing that there must be some sort of profit for taking first place, is why they call it professional. But he started out just working in a bicycle shop. And, fixing, bicycles for, other people. And he had a little bicycle. And so then, after doing a lot of riding, he decided he was going to enter a couple of these cycle tournaments or cycle races. Now, the interesting part about all that is he never got that, he kind of forgot that in 1897, they didn't allow Black people to be involved in these things. That, of course, that didn't affect him. He decided he was going to go ahead and do it anyway. And so, at the age of 18, he turned pro. And he started participating in, big day races. And he started breaking records in world championships. Now, the climate in 1897, as I'm sure you can imagine, wasn't the most conducive for him to be successful. Jim Crow laws or codes pretty much, limited even where he could stay during an event, because he couldn't stay in certain hotels because he was banned from going in them because he was Black. But at the same time, this gentleman persevered over all of that and won world championships and is considered to be one of the greatest cyclists in history. And there have been a bunch of, there's what's called a velodrome, which is the circular indoor, or not indoor. It's a circular track for bicycle racing. And there have been a few named after him in Indianapolis, which is where he got started. Due to his name value. And then there's also Major Taylor Boulevard in Worcester, Massachusetts, which is where he used to live. Now, when I wrote this name, a lot of people telling me that they had never heard of it. One guy today even asked me why there wasn't a movie about this guy, which, after thinking about it, I'm like, yeah, it's a good question. Because I can imagine what kind of movie you could write about this guy. But the sad part is, at the end of the day, he died penniless, and he had some very difficult times with his health, and he eventually passed away in 1932 of a heart attack, which is kind of ironic considering what kind of shape this guy had to put in to do what he was doing. But if you get the opportunity, like I said, I wrote about him today. I consider him to be a foundation of what black athletes had to go through to change the sport and also change social dialogue around blacks and whites competing in sports together or living together. Because at the end of the day, that's the same kind of thing that Dickie Robinson did. That's what made it so important. Was you had to figure that if black and whites could play baseball together, then that should be a system that we can live together. It was Jackie who first did that, and trust me, it was very rocky when he started. I have read multiple books on the subject, and a lot of people were like, oh, Jackie must have been just really calm and relaxed guy. No. Jackie Robinson was a born fighter. And in situations where he got treated very poorly, you have to give him credit because this guy, he was the kind of guy that would fight if you said something to him that wasn't right. But the first thing that Branch Rickey said to him was, before you even sign this contract or think of signing this contract, you have to promise me that whatever happens, you're not going to overreact, you're not going to attack anybody, you're not going to fight anybody. And he signed the contract. After that, he received and heard some of the vilest comment, the most reprehensible treatment, death threats, racial catcalls. He even used to get thrown at by pitchers. And there were a few times where he felt like striking out and fighting back. But he had made the promise not to do so. And then after a while, his teammates, who initially weren't all that happy about him playing, suddenly flipped the script and said, no, man, this ain't right. And they started coming to his defense. And if you threw a pitch at him and hit him, you can guarantee that the guy on the other team, somebody on the other team was going to get hit with a baseball. You can count on it. And that's what sports does. So, sports and politics make strange bedfellows. And that's what made, like we were saying at the beginning about Kobe Bryant, that's why we made him a cultural icon. Because you either liked the guy or you didn't like him. But you had an opinion. And whatever that opinion was, it was pretty strong. Strongly for or strongly against. Never in the middle or never confused about or ambivalent about your feelings about Kobe Bryant. And so it was the same thing about integration, and it was the same thing with baseball integrating itself. But the cool part is at the end of the day, it ended up creating some opportunities and changing a few social attitudes in terms of how to deal with race and race relations in this country. Now, far be it from me to sunshine and tell you that everything is great, that, there's no other issues involving race in terms of this country. Because I'd be lying to you and be laughing at the end of your breath because you know I was lying to you. But at the end of the day, what you have to figure is that sports itself, or athletics itself, is about being good at what you do, and you either are or you aren't. And there's no metric, there's no rubric in terms of how that goes. If you're good, if you're good, you're good. If you're not, you're not. And so it makes it easier for people to accept or people to assimilate into a sport if the guy's good. And like I said, to put all this into a nice big bow, that was what Kobe was. And being as good as he was, and being kind of a jerk, he was the kind. That was what made him what he was. And whether you liked him or didn't like him, the one thing you couldn't argue about was how good he was. And so that's where those two things sort of mix together. Is that in the world of sports, it's not about who's a nice guy, or there's guys who like to put out the image that they're great guys, and then you find out they're not. And then there's guys who don't like talking to people at all, and then you catch them in situations when they're alone and they can't shut up. There's always the differences and utter meanings of people who you don't know. But sport gives you the opportunity to see them at their rawest form. And people respect that. And that's pretty much what's good about sports. And when I hear people say, I don't want my kids playing sports, it doesn't matter, I disagree completely. It's the socialization part of sports that carries you to another level. I know all of my high school teammates, we're all friends to this day. And when there's an opportunity for all of us to get together and hang out, have a beer or two and talk crazy and bring back a lot of the events that we used to do back in the day, we take that chance. And, a few alcoholic beverages are consumed and people are laughing and telling jokes and talking about stuff they shouldn't be talking about in public because of the camaraderie of sport. That's what sports does. And so that when somebody says sports isn't important, I beg to differ. Because we wouldn't be where we are as a country if sports didn't mean anything. The best avenue of people doing things to make you think, or doing things to change the way people think about things, has been through sport. And that goes from Jackie all the way to Colin Kaepernick. And while some people don't like the way in which Colin Kaepernick made his protest, what was important was that he brought that to make people think about it. And whether you agreed or disagreed, he made conversation. And that's what makes, sports important. And while people don't like politics in sports, I am so sorry. Politics and sports are married like peanut butter and jelly. like mustard and ketchup on a hot dog. It is what it is. And that's what makes it, in my opinion, that's what makes it all so compelling. Because it puts everything in perspective. Because at the end of the day, you either won or you lost. And you did it together or you did it individually. But at the same time, everyone that saw it and you who was in it, you were all affected. And so that's what all of this means. And as somebody who, has lived a whole life through sports, that's what makes it fun for me, and that's why doing this gig is fun. And each week, I'm going to figure out a way to make it interesting and more fun every single time. And I'm going to push it and push it and push it and see where it goes. And hopefully, come along with me, and we'll do it together. means to me. And, hopefully we can have some fun doing it. So, if you're out there listening, I appreciate it. Pretty soon I want everybody out there that I know to give a listen and give a shout and let me know how they're feeling about what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So, if you have any questions or anything you want me to do or talk about, I'm open to that. I'd love to see the opportunity for this thing to grow.
And of course,
so if you're listening, thank you.
All right. Kevin,
you out there, Betty?
It's always so educational. You always put a smile on my face, let me tell you. Simmons on Sports by Kevin Simmons. And you know what? Everybody can listen to you from now on every Wednesday at 7 p.m.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm gonna make sure the word gets out. And like I said, we're gonna take this thing and see what we can do with it. We're gonna play around with it, see what happens.
Sounds great. And, I have already been getting comments on Facebook. People are talking. So keep up the great work.
Well,
Roy Morales is one. Big thumbs up. Yes. You got a lot of admirers out there, let me tell you.
Awesome.
So what can we look forward to for next Wednesday? Give me an idea. Do you have something in mind that you're looking into?
Yep. Trust me. You and I'll get together, and we're going to turn this thing into something that we're going to both be proud of.
All right.
I promise you that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, kid.
Appreciate you, and
appreciate.
I look forward to every show.
Thank you for this opportunity. You have a great evening, and I'll talk to you next time.
All righty. Thank you, Kevin.
Okay.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Have a good night. All right. You heard it right here. And that's Simmons on Sports by Kevin Simmons. You cannot miss that. He is so awesome when it comes to sports. He's got so much information to share with the community. And that's what I love about him. He's an awesome person. Big heart. Oh, okay. So again, like I said, it's every Wednesday at 7 p.m. And he takes the full hour, 7 to 8. So spread the word. Let others know that he's going to be on every Wednesdays at 7. And that's Simmons on Sports by Kevin Simmons. All right, you heard it right here on the voice of SanJoaquin.org. Right here off the Miracle Mile in Stockton, California. And this has been Betty Ramirez. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care and God bless.